Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 160 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
I'm excited to be recording. I look forward to our sessions even more.
Yeah.
Lately. Just because I'm not seeing many people and I'm not getting to see you. We don't eat lunch. There is no place to eat lunch.
Or is it also because you are trapped here all day with 3 women?
Well, that's part of it.
Yeah.
So to have a little man company, and that probably is not coming out exactly
Hey,
right.
You said it, not me.
It's nice when you come over, we get to hang out.
Yeah.
It's the little things, man, right now. It really is.
Well, you even cut your own hair, man, I see.
I did because, what are you going to do? You got to get out the wall trimmers and slap on a number 2 and just make it short and roll with it.
Just go for it, huh?
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
We have had some great new Patreon support, which really is amazing during this time that we're going through, that people have chosen to make the decision to say, hey, we love what you're doing, and we're going to try to help you guys through what is a difficult time for everyone. So let's give some shout outs. We had Melissa Pilmer.
Hey, Melissa.
Don Thiel.
What's going on, Don?
Jennifer Casigny.
Hey, Casigny.
Lacey Frazier.
What's going on, Lacey?
Jordan Hopkins.
Hey, Jordan.
Catherine German.
Hey, German.
Kathleen.
What's going on, Kathleen?
Laura Parisi.
Parisi.
Hattie Irons.
Hattie Irons.
Judith McShay.
Hey, McShay.
Idis Johannesdottir.
Hey, Johannes Dado, how are you?
I don't know how close I am. Hopefully pretty close.
Yeah.
Dana Christian Wood.
Hey, Dana.
Michelle Pierce.
What's going on, Michelle?
Joseph Martin.
Hey, Joseph.
Destiny Scott.
Hey, Destiny.
Melissa Okinka.
Little Melissa.
Amber Matthews.
Hey, Amber.
Eliza.
What's going on, Eliza?
Juliana. Tier Bronson.
I'm going to go with Tier Bronson.
Okay. Whichever way you want to go.
Yeah.
Chenille Shirley.
Hey, Chenille.
And Jen Sharp.
Hey, thanks, Jen.
So thank you very much for the new Patreon support. And then if we go back into the vault.
Let's do it.
This week we selected Elizabeth Wolfinger.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Great supporter, been with us a long time, and it's very much appreciated.
Every time I say Elizabeth, I always think of
Red Fox.
Yeah.
I'm coming to join you,
yeah,
Elizabeth.
Exactly.
I used to love that show, man. I would watch it every day on reruns. We had some great PayPal support as well. Kate Massey.
Hey, Kate.
Dorothy Ballerini.
Hey, thank you, Dorothy.
Julie Shantz.
Oh, that's awesome, Julie.
And Michelle Slocum.
Hey, Slocum.
So thank you for that. Gibbs, right now, we have a new episode out on True Crime All the Time. It's an interesting one. I'll say that.
It is.
We're talking about Stanley Tukey Williams.
Yeah.
This is a guy that was a co-founder of the Crips gang.
Yep.
Out in Southern California, Los Angeles area. And I think most people are familiar with the Crips. They became a very large gang.
Yeah, huge.
Over the years. And this guy was one of the co-founders.
Yeah.
Was a very rough and tumble guy. Big guy, went about 300, all muscle, huge biceps, kind of looked like Arnold, the Black Arnold, I call him. But he was a killer.
He was.
And not just gang related. I mean, the murders that he was convicted for didn't seem to really have much affiliation with a gang. It wasn't like he was getting back at the Bloods or, a rival gang. He just went out and killed, stole some money, and was caught for that.
Not a lot of money either.
No, it's 1979, but even for 1979, the amount of money that this guy stole in a number of robberies where he killed people, it was nothing. I mean, he essentially took 4 lives for what? A couple $100?
Yeah.
Sickening. But it's a good episode. Make sure you check that out.
It is.
All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I actually am.
You're excited for this one.
Well, it's nearby.
Yeah, it's a case that occurred pretty close to us. We're talking about the Bricca family murders that occurred in Cincinnati, Ohio. The Bricca family was made up of Jerry Linda, and their daughter, Debbie. And all three were found murdered by their next door neighbors. The police and FBI have attempted to solve this case for years. They've had a few persons of interest, but as of today, it remains unsolved. I think the thing about this case is that there are some very interesting theories.
And some twists that occur
During the, throughout the years, but there's also some interesting theories involved. So before we get into the details of this case, let's take a minute. Let's talk about the victims first. This is a cold case from 1966. So there's not a lot of details as you might expect. Definitely not as many details as you would have on a case today. Gerald John Bricca was born on January 25th, 1938 in San Francisco, California, to Elmer and Dolores Bricca. Gerald went by Jerry to all of his friends and family. He graduated from high school with honors in 1956. Then Jerry graduated from Stanford University in 1960 with an engineering degree.
Impressive.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
Stanford is not the easiest university to get into, and engineering is a tough field.
It's really tough, yeah.
My daughter's boyfriend is in the engineering field. I talk to him regularly, so, I think some of his classes, and he's early on, but some of his classes are pretty tough. I would not want to be taking them right now.
Yeah, hey, when I was going to school, I took some janitorial engineering.
Did you?
I did, as a job, yeah.
Now, was that how to make the mops or just how to arrange all of your supplies to get, the most efficiency?
It just depends on 101 or 102.
Oh, did you get to 102?
No, I did not.
No. You got through 101.
Yeah.
But I'm proud of you.
Well, yeah,
I'm proud of
you. Yeah.
Jerry was employed right out of college by Monsanto, huge company,
Oh, big time.
as a chemical engineer, and he relocated to Seattle, Washington. Gary was described as a strong, husky guy. He loved to swim. Growing up, he had been a competitive swimmer. He was known by colleagues as a hard worker, always worked long hours, weekends when needed.
What do you call that? Workaholic?
Yeah, some people call that workaholic. Maybe, in the 60s, you would definitely say that's a workaholic. Today, I just think that's normal.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's what they expect of you.
Yeah, we've gotten to the point where long nights and weekends is just a normal work week.
Yeah, what do you mean you can't? You're not working this evening. What? Didn't you understand when you took the job you'd have to do that? Nope. My boss is listening right now. She's like, yeah, you did.
Yeah, you did. And yes, you do. It was when Jerry was working in Seattle that he met his future wife, Linda. At the time, she was working as a flight attendant for a big airline. Linda Jane Beulah Bricca was born on January 4th, 1943 in Barrington, Illinois, to Adolph and June Beulah. Her dad was a very successful engineer and business owner in Chicago. She grew up pretty wealthy. After she graduated high school, she went to work for the airline straight away.
Immediately.
Yep.
At age 18.
And relocated to Seattle. The one thing that neighbors and friends and even family said about Linda was that she had cover model looks.
It's the one consistent thing when you research this case about her. It always talks about how beautiful, head-turning this woman was.
Yeah, and now she had a million other great qualities, sure. She loved animals. She was a huge lover of animals.
She sure was.
She grew up with a ton of pets. And family said, Gibbs, that she was the type of person that if she was walking down the street and she saw a neighbor's dog, no way was she going to pass that dog without stopping to play with it, to pet it. She just loved animals of all kinds.
And we all have that one person that likes to do that.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, you and I are animal lovers for sure.
Yeah.
I can walk down the street and pass a dog, though. I don't have to pet every dog.
No. But I've been with people that they even thought they saw a stray out in the middle of a field. They want you to stop the car
so they can get it.
And you're like, no, that's a fox or that's a ground. And they're like, I think it's a little puppy.
It's a puma.
I need to make sure.
Don't go. It's a puma.
Yeah.
Jerry and Linda got married in Seattle in 1961. Their daughter, Deborah Ann Bricca, was born on June 6, 1962 in Seattle, Washington. Deborah was just a beautiful, sweet little girl. She took after her mother when it came to just loving all animals.
Yeah.
It was in 1963 that the Briccas moved to Cincinnati when Jerry was transferred. They bought a 3-bedroom tri-level house at 3381 Greenway Avenue. This is in the Woodhaven subdivision of the suburb of Bridgetown. So we're talking the west side of Cincinnati. Once they got settled in, Linda took a part-time job with a local veterinarian. Seems like the perfect job for her. She loved it. She loved working with the animals. She loved her coworkers. The Bricca family also had 2 dogs. They had a Cocker Spaniel known as Thumper and another dog that was a mixed poodle known as Dusty.
Thumper and Dusty.
Cool names.
There you go.
Also happen to be the names of our side act that we don't talk about very much.
Well, I thought we were going to bring that up. Why would you bring that up now?
I'm not giving the specifics of it.
Everybody's going to want to know why I have to be Thumper and you're Dusty.
It's the way it rolls.
I mean, Dusty's closer to like a Rex West name, not Thumper. Here comes Thumper.
But Gibbs, everyone in the neighborhood knew these 2 dogs because they were barkers. And it was said that they just weren't friendly to strangers. They weren't friendly to anyone unless the family had been around these people a couple of times, the dogs in the family together. And there are a lot of dogs like that. Very suspicious at first. Now, my dogs don't care.
No,
especially my big one. You could literally wear a ski mask and carry a knife and a gun, and he will lay down and want you to rub his belly.
I think I could kidnap one of your kids and he would hold the door open.
He just doesn't care.
Be like, let me get the door for you.
Now, if it gets to be 5:30 and he hasn't eaten, then he cares. Right. But other than that, he doesn't care what goes on.
No. But that little dog.
The little dog is different.
Yeah. And can it make some noise?
And it's a little snippy too. Linda and Debbie also kept some rabbits in a big cage in the backyard. On Sunday, September 25th, 1966, the family attended church at the 10 a.m. service. Then Jerry went to his office for the afternoon.
Well, he is a workaholic.
Well, if he's going to the office on Sunday afternoon, yeah, he's a workaholic. He eventually returned home later that night after stopping by the nearby UDF convenient mart. This was around 8 p.m. to pick up some milk.
You know how much we love our UDFs around here.
United Dairy Farmers. Some good ice cream, good malts, good shakes. Linda's father, in later interviews with police, said that he called Linda on that Sunday to discuss a trip that he and her mother were taking, and he wanted to give Linda the itinerary so that she knew where they would be, on these different days.
Sure.
He said this was sometime around 10 p.m. Eastern time. He also said he didn't detect anything wrong during this call that he had with his daughter.
So no stress in the voice or anything like that.
No. I mean, according to him, this was like every other call they had ever had. Now, witnesses would later tell police that at around this same time, somewhere around 10 p.m., Jerry was outside. He was putting the trash cans at the end of the driveway for the next morning's trash pickup. One neighbor recalled seeing him go back into his home right around 10 p.m. And really, Gibbs, this is the last time anyone talked to or saw the Bricca family alive. On Tuesday, September 27th, the next door neighbor, a guy named Richard Meyer, saw the Bricca's trash cans still out on the curb. And this was not common, right? This was a full day after the pickup. It just wasn't like them. They would normally bring their trash cans in.
Yeah, on Monday, not wait till have them still be outside on a Tuesday.
But I think what made Richard and his wife even more suspicious was the local newspapers laying in the yard untouched. They were starting to pile up.
Well, you got to remember back then, you didn't really have the 24-hour news cycle, the smartphones and things like that. So if you wanted to get your news when you wanted it, you had to go out, grab your paper, and read it at your leisure and not wait for the 6 o'clock or the 11 o'clock news.
No, and I think a lot of people took great enjoyment, right, in taking time to read the paper. It's something that a lot of people just don't do anymore. And it's why a lot of the newspapers are struggling.
Yeah.
Because you can literally in a second pull news articles up on your phone. You don't have to wait for somebody to throw a paper on your front step.
And I remember when I was little, we had the morning paper and the evening paper. We had the Journal Herald in the morning and the Dayton Daily in the evening.
And you just hoped you weren't in either one of them.
Exactly.
Now, Mrs. Meyer also said that she had noticed the cars had not left the driveway in the last 2 days. So, this husband and wife, these neighbors, Gibbs, they're seeing a bunch of things that are throwing up a number of red flags.
Yeah.
They also said that they could hear the dogs barking inside, but they had not seen them outside in quite some time.
So I wonder if these neighbors were just kind of a little bit nosy.
Well, there are quite a few neighbors like that. I mean, I'm not saying they were stalkers or peeping Toms or anything, but there are neighbors that like to keep a close eye on the goings on.
What's happening on this street today?
Yes, there are quite a few neighbors like that. And to be honest with you, I like to have a couple neighbors like that.
Yeah, it's kind of a good thing.
It's like having your own personal neighborhood watch. Now, they just do it from their house,
Right.
But still.
You're glad they're on your side of the street, next door to you, because I feel pretty good about going out of town. I don't have to worry about it.
No, exactly. So Richard finally decided that he would check on the family. And that evening, he walked over to the house. It was around 10 p.m. As he was outside, he grabbed a fellow neighbor to go with him. They walked up to the door and they knocked several times, but no one answered. Richard tried the doorknob and it was unlocked. So he opened the door and he started to go inside. And as he started in, he was calling out, "Hello, is anyone in there?" But as he told police later, he had to stop because very quickly the smell was so strong and he knew what it was. Richard was a veteran of World War II. He knew the smell of death.
Something you can never forget.
I would say that to be true. So he went home and called the police. Police arrived on the scene around 10:30 p.m. and they discovered that not only was the front door unlocked, but the back door was unlocked as well.
Probably not that uncommon back then in a nice neighborhood like that to leave your doors unlocked.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's nearly as suspicious as it would be today.
Right.
I think many more people lock all of their doors today, knowing full well what goes on.
Right.
I mean, even in very nice neighborhoods, people lock their doors.
Oh, yeah.
More often than not. So police walked through the house. They made it up to the third level where the bedrooms were. And when they got into the master bedroom, they discovered a very bloody scene. 28-year-old Jerry was lying on the floor face down between the bed and the wall. He was still dressed in the clothes that he wore to the office that Sunday, but he didn't have any shoes on. They could tell that he had been stabbed several times. On top of Jerry was his wife, 24-year-old Linda. She was Gibbs laying on top of him, face up. She was wearing her nightgown as well as her housecoat.
Yeah, the housecoat was fully unzipped and open. I didn't know back then the housecoats actually zipped, but I guess her housecoat actually did.
Nope, my mom had one as well. I remember it very clearly.
Okay.
And it's something that you just don't see really anymore. Most of them have a sash or something to tie him with.
Right.
But back then, I really remember it zipped up all the way to the neck, if I remember.
That's interesting. I never really knew that. Yeah, so her house coat was open and her nightgown was soaked in blood.
Police could see that she had been beaten and stabbed. Next to the bodies was Jerry's empty wallet. And then in the room next door, police found 4-year-old Debbie lying face up on her bedroom floor. She was in her flannel nightgown. She had one red sock on her foot, and then the other sock was lying on her bed, but she was covered in blood. And police could tell that she had been stabbed as well. They did find both dogs alive and in fairly good condition. They had been locked in the third bedroom. The next day, Wednesday, police released more details of what they discovered that night, along with some details from the coroner, Dr. Cleveland. They were able to determine that both Jerry and Linda had been assaulted before being stabbed to death. They were both bound with duct tape around the wrist, and Jerry had a sock shoved in his mouth, and then someone put tape over the sock in his mouth. Linda at one point had tape over her mouth as well, because they found some adhesive residue and a small piece of tape still attached to her lower chin area. But when they found Jerry and Linda, they were not bound. So it was assumed that the killer removed the tape before leaving the scene. The coroner, Dr. Cleveland, reported that Linda had been sexually assaulted, but authorities really couldn't say what the couple had been beaten with besides the fact that it was some type of sharp object, but it wasn't a knife. But whatever it was, it did cause some lacerations to both of their heads.
I just wonder what kind of weapon or item can do that. You think maybe they had a handgun and they used the butt of it?
I think a lot of different types of items can make lacerations to the head. I mean, if you've got some type of edge, doesn't even really need to be a sharp edge, and you strike somebody on the skull, I think you could cause lacerations. A handgun, you could pistol whip somebody.
Yeah.
Like a small statue that has a base, or I'm just trying to think. There's probably
the candlestick.
The candlestick in the library would do it.
Yeah.
The coroner reported that Jerry had been stabbed or cut 9 to 10 times. He had several wounds to his neck, his back, and to his chest. Linda had been stabbed 6 times. And all 6 of them were 7-inch stab wounds, and Gibbs 7 inches.
Mm-hmm.
So deep that some of these almost went through the backside of her body.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Very, very deep stab wounds.
The anger you would have to drive that knife through somebody like that. Wow.
Police said that she was stabbed and sexually assaulted on the bed before being laid on top of Jerry, who was already on the floor. The coroner came out and said that Debbie had 4 stab wounds to her chest.
4, man. They had to stab her 4 times. They did say it looked like at the murder scene she was dragged and her legs and arms were stretched and spread out.
So her arms were above her head, as if somebody had maybe dragged her, pulled her, and then dropped her arms.
Yeah.
And they were just kind of up above her head. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Police reported that the murder weapon had to be at least 5.5 inches to 7 inches long. And I think that was based on how deep Linda's wounds were.
Yeah, I think they thought to get a 7-inch cut into the body, the minimum would be 5.5 inches if you forced it and pushed hard enough to get it to go in that far.
But still, like you said, it's just brutal to think about, how deep that is, how much force that is.
A lot of rage.
A lot of rage, maybe a lot of anger. Police determined that the murder weapon was a kitchen carving knife. Police searched the home for knives, and they found one that was missing. From the Bricca's knife set, It was a steel-bladed knife with a teakwood handle, and the knife set was kept in a kitchen drawer. So police theorized that either the knife was already on the counter, or the killer knew exactly where to find it, or they found it just by rummaging.
Yeah.
There's a couple different explanations there, but police were also able to determine that the murders happened somewhere between 10 p.m. Sunday and 7 a.m. on Monday. Because as they were doing their investigation, right, they figured out that the neighbor had seen Jerry Sunday night around 10 p.m.
Sure, and Linda talked to her dad about the same time.
So they were both alive then.
Right.
They also found out that Jerry was supposed to fly out of Cincinnati to West Virginia at 6:30 a.m. on Monday morning for a business trip. When he failed to show up at the airport, his company, Monsanto, called his home and left a message. And I think Gibbs, the coroner, took this information and through some of his own investigation, he refined the time of death even further. He put it at just before midnight on Sunday to the 25th for all three victims. The forensics team was able to lift several fingerprints. They vacuumed the rugs. They also rolled them up and took them back to the lab. Police needed some clues, and they also needed to figure out the motive behind these murders. They called in the FBI. And at first, the thinking was this was a robbery gone bad.
Well, they knew that someone took everything out of Jerry's wallet, and they couldn't find any other cash in the house. Not saying that they had cash in the house, but if they did, it was gone.
But I think the problem was, okay, if this was a robbery gone wrong, why kill the family? And especially, why kill a small 4-year-old girl?
Yeah. Nothing that you needed to do.
And why sexually assault the wife? None of those are things that have to be done during the course of a robbery. A robber could tie these people up, take whatever money he or she wanted, and leave the house with these people tied up.
Yeah.
They're gone, poof. But that's not what they did.
No, they went to extremes.
They sexually assaulted the wife, and they killed all three family members. Investigators theorized that the killer came in through the rear unlocked basement door into the utility room, which was by the lower level family room. Investigators figured out that Linda had been folding laundry on the couch while watching TV. They also found some damp clothes inside the dryer. Part of the theory is that Linda didn't hear the intruder.
Well, I can imagine if you were near the dryer running, it does muffle out sounds, right?
Yeah.
You can't hear things because of that.
Some dryers are very loud.
Yeah.
So the intruder got in, surprised Linda, got her upstairs, maybe by gunpoint or by holding a knife to her throat. Once upstairs, the intruder hit Linda in the head several times. Then at some point encountered Jerry and did the same. This person took both of them into the bedroom, bound their hands, gagged them. Police theorized that the intruder killed 4-year-old Debbie first, then came back, killed Jerry, sexually assaulted Linda, and then killed her. That's the order that they initially believed that the murders took place.
Yeah. I think there's some other theories that Jerry was first and then the little girl. Again, it's all theories.
Yeah, because they don't know for sure.
Right.
They're theorizing what they think could have happened. You could make the argument that most intruders would try to take out the biggest threat first.
Sure.
Which in this case would be Jerry.
But if he's already bound and got a sock shoved in his throat and tape over it,
then he's no longer a threat. Possibly.
Right.
Police canvassed the area. They talked to coworkers and they worked any tips that came in. One neighbor they talked to said that the week before, on Thursday, she had seen a strange man walking up the street in front of her home as well as the Bricca's home and others in the neighborhood. Apparently, this guy paced back and forth several times, and then she never saw him.
Kind of like casing the street.
Possibly. The neighbor really couldn't recall any details, not enough to give police a description. One thing the police did find, Gibbs, was that the community was scared. They were in shock that a crime like this, a triple murder, could happen in their community.
Well, this is something they just didn't see in that neighborhood.
No. And everyone is asking the question, how could someone come into our community and kill such a good family?
Yeah.
And especially a little 4-year-old girl. How could someone do that? What type of monsters are out there?
What kind of evil are we dealing with here?
And we talked about unlocked doors. You know, obviously after this happened, everyone started locking their doors. Gun sales went up in the area. And we see this quite often when a horrific murder occurs, especially back in the day, right? When you're talking 50s, 60s, where people weren't used to seeing this on a routine basis, it caused them to run out and arm themselves.
And we've seen that in other cases during this time frame. The exact same reaction is to find a way to protect your kids and maybe not let them go outside as much either.
But Gibbs, this wasn't the only event around this area that caused people to head to the gun store. There was another event, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. A friend of Linda's said that Linda had been nervous the last few weeks, maybe even the last month. She had been acting somewhat strange, but the friend didn't know why. And when she asked Linda about it, all Linda mentioned was that she had lost some close friends to horrific deaths, but she didn't want to talk about it. The friend said that Linda definitely seemed to be paranoid.
A little bit edgy.
Yep, on edge, a little paranoid. The community put out a $5,000 reward for any leads that ended in an arrest and conviction. Later on in the investigation, authorities dug up sewer and sanitary drains. They were trying to locate the knife that they believed to be the murder weapon. They were looking for any clues at this point.
I can understand the sewer, right? Outside, throw it down that little, where that it guy lives.
Mm-hmm.
Toss it down there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can get rid of there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. I don't know how you flush a knife and it makes its way through the trap, and I don't see that.
But then again, you remember how college days were. You were probably surprised when you saw some things in those bathrooms that actually made it down.
That's true.
What do they say? If you can't beat it, don't flush it or something like that.
I don't think anybody says that. I've never heard that in my life. I think you just made that up.
Did I make it up?
But they didn't find anything, right? By looking in the sewers, the drains. Around the first week of October, the FBI got the hair and fiber samples back to help aid in the investigation. It was also around this same time that the family's funeral and burial was held back in Illinois, back where Linda was from. It was held at Windridge Memorial Park and Nature Sanctuary in Cary, Illinois. By May of 1966, the police had interviewed over 400 persons of interest, and they had one that seemed like a pretty solid lead. Investigators brought in Linda's boss, the veterinarian, pretty quickly into the questioning. He lawyered up.
He did what I say you should always do.
Yep. He refused to discuss Linda or anything to do with the murders. He didn't respond to the questions about some rumors that police had heard about he and Linda having an affair, or some rumors about him having an obsession with Linda.
Yeah.
And those are things that police, upon hearing, would be very interested in talking to this guy about. Now, the police had no evidence to put him at the crime scene, so there really wasn't much they could do. They couldn't pursue him any further because he wasn't willing to talk to them. And they didn't have enough to charge him or anything like that. I will say several of the investigators came out and said that they thought if they could have questioned him, it would have went somewhere. They would have gotten something out of him. They firmly believed that.
Yeah, I think they thought something was there. They just needed to be able to get him to expand on some things.
But Gibbs, what's very interesting, and I have no idea if this has anything to do with the Bricca murders, but in 2004, this veterinarian that police really wanted to talk to and his wife took their own lives together at the same time.
Yeah, strange.
I don't know what that means.
Don't know if it has anything to do with this or not. It just seems really strange.
Yeah. I mean, it is what, 38 years later?
Yeah.
So if you're guilt ridden over something that you did, would you wait 38 years? I don't know.
I don't think I would, but
maybe there's some other problems. We really don't know. There's no way to know. I just thought it was very interesting that, this guy that they were really hot on, they really wanted to talk to, not only took his own life, but his wife did as well at the same time.
Yeah. So if he was a good suspect, it doesn't matter at this point because you're never going to know because he's took his own life. He's not there to go after anymore.
No, he's deceased. Now, it doesn't mean they couldn't pin the murder on him if some
DNA,
if some new hit happened but police thought of everything. I mean, they thought about satanic cults. They thought, okay, was there some type of mafia hit for whatever reason? Now, to me, some of those seem pretty far-fetched. This seemed like a pretty down the middle of the road, middle-class family.
Yeah.
As far as I know, they weren't into Satanism
or anything illegal
or had any beefs with the mafia. On the first anniversary of the murders, the reward was raised from $5,000 to $26,000.
It's pretty hefty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money in 1967.
Absolutely.
And it's a lot more reward money than we've seen in cases that are much, much newer.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's time to look at some other persons of interest. About 10 months before the Bricca family murders, the Cincinnati area had seen a series of murders. It started on December 2nd, 1965, when 56-year-old Imogene Harrington was found in the basement of her apartment building dead. Imogene had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death. Then on April 4th, 1966, Lois Dant, who was also 56 years old, was found murdered in her apartment. She too had been sexually assaulted and strangled.
Kind of seeing a trend here.
Well, that's very eerie, right? Two women, both 56 years old, both live in apartments, and they were both sexually assaulted and strangled. Then on June 10th, Jeanette Messer, also 56 years old, took her dog for a walk in a park over by the University of Cincinnati. Around 6:15 a.m., she was found dead. She had also been sexually assaulted and strangled. At this point, Gibbs, and I think rightfully so, both the police and the press thought Cincinnati had a serial killer.
Yeah. And I think people were beginning to panic.
And maybe they should have been panicking. This was a very definitive MO, right? Sexual assault and then strangulation. And by the next victim, both the police and the press had labeled this killer as the Cincinnati Strangler. And the next victim was 31-year-old Barbara Bowman. On August 14th, she got picked up in a cab, but she was not aware that the cab had been stolen and the person driving assaulted her, tried to strangle her, but Barbara was able to fight him off. And a witness saw her get out of the cab. She ran off screaming. She was hell-bent on trying to get away from this man.
Yeah, wanted to get away from that nightmare.
But he wasn't about to let her go. This guy chased her down in the cab, caught up with her, and ran her over.
But that wasn't good enough. He
No.
had to stop and get out, walked up to her, and stabbed her in her throat.
Just to make sure that she was dead.
Yeah, because she saw him and could identify him later.
And then you had the Bricca family murders. And I think most investigators didn't think that the Bricca family murders were related to the Cincinnati Strangler murders. The Cincinnati Strangler would go on to claim additional victims. So, Gibbs, what you had was, that's another problem for the police. They're investigating this at the very same time they're investigating the Bricca family murders.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be scary because you have the Cincinnati Strangler. I mean, that's like hearing the Boston Strangler. I mean, that's a very, as you would say, ominous name.
It is.
Yeah.
Anytime you add a city before the word strangler,
yeah,
very ominous.
So you got that going on. And then you have this triple murder that involved a 4-year-old. Not a good time to be in Cincinnati, I don't think.
Shortly after the Strangler claimed his 5th victim, the FBI came out and said that the Strangler was an African-American male based on some hair samples that they had. And authorities knew that the suspect in the Bricca murders was not African-American based on the hair sample reports that the FBI got back. So the two weren't connected. And the Strangler was caught shortly after claiming his 7th victim. His name was Posteel Lasky Jr. He was convicted of one of the murders and assumed to be guilty of the rest. But Gibbs, I want to go back to Linda's friend talking about how paranoid Linda was about, a month before she was murdered. She had said that some close friends of hers had recently been murdered and she was scared. One of those friends was 21-year-old Valerie Jean Percy. Valerie lived with her parents in the family mansion in the town of Kenilworth, a suburb of Chicago. Her father, Charles Percy, was very wealthy. He had been a successful executive. He was also running for the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, he wanted to be a senator.
And that's how you get to be a senator.
Having a lot of money.
And running for the U.S. Senate.
Yeah.
Valerie had recently graduated from Cornell University, and she returned home to assist in her father's political campaign. On Sunday, September 18th, 1966, it's just a week before Linda was murdered, Valerie's stepmom woke up early and she heard some talking and she also heard some moaning. She went to look to see where the noise was coming from and she realized it was coming from Valerie's room. She opened the door to see a man bending over Valerie who was lifeless, lying in her bed, which was soaked in blood. The man pointed his flashlight into Valerie's stepmom's eyes, and she ran away, screaming for her husband. So Charles heard these screams. He pushed the alarm button on the security system. Yeah. He also grabbed his gun, and he ran into Valerie's room. But by the time he got there, Valerie's killer had fled the scene. But when he looked at his daughter, he could tell she had been stabbed multiple times. She was dead.
And I'm guessing as soon as that alarm went off, that guy was out of there. He wasn't going to wait around. He knew he had to go. And maybe he knew the dad might be coming with a gun.
Yeah, might be packing. I think twofold, right? When he's seen by the stepmom and the stepmom starts screaming a man's name, he knows.
Right.
A man is about ready to come. Maybe he thought, I don't want to tangle with him. Coupled with the alarm, number one, there's the noise. Number two is the fact that, okay, the authorities are going to come.
Yeah.
So you add all that together.
The bigger factor, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's might be coming with a gun and the authorities.
And they do have guns.
And they will have the guns, yeah.
The stepmom described the killer as best as she could recall. She said he had dark hair, was around 5'8", and weighed around 160 pounds. She said that he was wearing a checkered shirt, but no one saw the killer leave the house. The coroner later said that Valerie had been beaten in the head severely with some type of object that caused some cuts, but it was not a knife. She was not sexually assaulted, but she was stabbed repeatedly and she bled out. Investigators found nothing missing from her room. They didn't find anything missing from the entire house.
No, and for over 2 years, the police and FBI interviewed over 1,000 people. And they did follow up on several dozen leads that took them to Colorado, Louisiana, Pennsylvania, Texas.
At one point, investigators thought that it could be the work of a high-end burglary ring made up of 3 men, Harold Evans, Francis Holmer, and Frederick Malchow. And when they brought these guys into the station for questioning, Evans and Holmer told investigators that it was Malchow that committed Valerie's murder. The problem is police investigated it and they couldn't come up with a single piece of evidence to make a case against him. But these two guys didn't stop saying it. They just kept telling authorities that Malchow did it. And they said if they convicted him, they wanted a deal because they had recently been imprisoned for theft.
So there you go.
So
it's always a deal. Got to have the deal.
And that's something that you and I have touched on quite a bit.
Right.
Sounds to me like they got pinched and they're looking for a way out of it. And if they have to serve up one of their fellow conspirators on a silver platter for murder, okay, that's fine. We're willing to do that.
Yeah.
Just get us out of this theft charge.
Yeah. We want to be able to go home.
The FBI traveled to Pennsylvania, where Frederick was being held in jail waiting his trial for a home invasion. And during this home invasion, he sexually assaulted the victim and then committed a robbery. But he told police he had nothing to do with the killing of Valerie Percy. In 1967, he escaped from jail. But somehow, Gibbs, during the escape, he took a wrong turn and fell to his death.
Yeah. That's what you get for escaping.
I don't know how you take a wrong turn and fall to your death, but that's what he did.
Yeah. So they won't ever know what happened if he had anything to do with it because he's not around to talk about it.
I don't know, Gibbs. It really sounds like his two buddies were just trying to get themselves out of their pinch.
Yeah.
And they were more than willing to offer up his name. I think the fact that the police had his name and couldn't tie him in any way, that tells you something.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if they had something, they would have pushed for it.
Valerie's dad did end up becoming a U.S. Senator. He was a U.S. Senator for over 20 years and made it his mission to try to find her killer. But even though I think you and I don't necessarily believe that this guy killed Valerie, I think there were quite a few people on the force in Kenilworth that thought, it could have been him. The FBI looked into connections between the Bricca case and Valerie's murder, but they didn't feel like there was a connection, even though there were some similarities.
Yeah, I mean, I think the beating to the head, just, of course, the stabbing. Clearly, there was a relationship between the two victims.
Right, and I think that's big.
Yeah.
But...
and you're 6 hours away, right? 6-7 hours away. I mean, it's feasible that someone would travel and do that. I just don't...
I think, from a police standpoint and an FBI standpoint, and I'm sure they did this.
Yeah.
I'm sure they looked into the connection, right? So obviously Valerie and Linda had a connection. They were friends. They would have tried to find the connection between Malchow and the two of them, or anybody else, really. Any other suspect or persons of interest they had, because if they could have found a connection, that would mean a lot.
Well, yeah. And knowing that Valerie's case is still unsolved today as well, and that the fact her dad was a U.S. Senator, you would think that he would have pulled everything he could have to try to get that case solved. And for them not to be able to solve it with all that power that he would have had, it tells you that probably was no connection there.
They just couldn't make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think as a U.S. senator and the father of a daughter who was murdered, you're going to sit on the sidelines and just see how things go. I imagine he was probably very assertive and checked in regularly and, probably put a little pressure, whatever pressure he could put, and offered up any resources he had to offer.
Well, sure, because being in the position of power, but also having all that wealth that he had.
He had a lot going for him.
Yeah.
Now, there was another friend of Linda Bricca's who was murdered. She was a flight attendant back in Seattle named Lonnie Trumbull. Linda also worked with Lonnie's roommate, Lisa Wick, when they were all three flight attendants. Lonnie and Lisa were attacked in their apartment on June 23rd, 1966. They were beaten in the head with a 2x4. Lonnie died, and Lisa never completely recovered from the severe beating. She was in a coma for several weeks. Lisa didn't recall the attack at all. Those memories were gone when she woke up from the coma.
And that's probably best, I think.
I would say if you're in that situation, it probably is.
Yeah.
Because it had to have been a nightmarish situation to be in.
Sure.
And if there's any way that you don't have to relive it, don't have to remember it. Now, nobody wants to be in a coma.
No.
But I don't think that's the worst thing in the world to not have to dream about it, have nightmares about it, and think about it constantly because you can't remember it.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, Gibbs, there are some interesting things about this case. First of all, Lonnie was a friend of Linda's. So when Linda talked about having two friends that were murdered and being scared before her murder happened, that's very strange. That's out of the ordinary to have so many people in your circle or in your friends list be murdered within what's a pretty short period of time.
Why are my good friends being murdered all
I guess that's my point. She had a reason to be a little scared, a little paranoid. I think, the other thing that's interesting about this case specifically is that most people attribute the attack and Lonnie's murder to Ted Bundy, who lived nearby at the time this occurred. Number one, they fit his profile. And number two, they frequented the grocery store that he was working at during the time. But this is one that Bundy never confessed to. And, he went to his death denying that he had anything to do with the attack or the murder of Lonnie Trumbull. So to this day, the case is still unsolved.
Yeah, and I don't know if they can't prove it was Bundy. Probably always will be.
I also wonder how much time goes into thinking it's Bundy to the exclusion of other possible suspects. I always worry about that because I think it happens sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think Bundy was the only killer in Seattle, that part of town at that time.
No, matter of fact, we know he wasn't.
Right.
There were some rumors that Linda, Lisa, and Lonnie, while working for the airline, turned in a drug runner who was using the flights that they worked on and that their murders were payback.
Yeah.
For turning him in, interfering with his business. But I think for the most part, authorities consider the three murders as being separate and not tied into each other. When you look at the predominant theory, I think in each jurisdiction, it seems like Lonnie's death and Lisa's assault was Bundy.
Yeah.
Valerie Percy, most likely the victim of this burglary ring, and specifically this guy, Malchow. The Bricca family murders could have been a love affair that ended badly or an obsession.
Right.
From this veterinarian. We don't know. I think it's tough, though, to look at all three of these and say, wow, there's no connection. I mean, there's no doubt that Linda had a reason to be paranoid.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, these are friends of hers being murdered, and then all of a sudden she's murdered. Man, it is really hard not to think that somehow, some way, the three are connected.
It's just one of those bizarre things, because you would never think that you would have a circle of friends that would all go through these tragic murders in less than a year time.
But we know they have some pretty good DNA that they believe belongs to the suspect in the Bricca murders. Of hair samples. They got all those tests back. Right. The FBI did. I'm sure they continue to run it through all the systems that they have access to. Obviously, they just haven't been able to come up with a hit yet because whoever it is doesn't have their DNA in the system.
Eventually, they might get a hit if they keep running the fingerprints that they lifted. Somebody's going to come up in that system one of these days.
Or they could get into the area of trying to look at familial DNA that you and I have talked about, and Morph and I have talked about quite a bit.
Right.
You know, okay, your suspect's not in the system, but can you find somebody that is in their family that is in the system and work your way down to who the actual suspect is? To me, that stuff is fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
And that's some of the things that should have these killers of yesteryear shaking in their boots if they're still alive.
And that's a good point, right? This is all these cases, but the Bricca family is over 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
As that time frame expands, it's just harder to solve.
Well, it's harder to solve, but it's also more likely with each passing year that the perpetrator is going to die.
Yeah.
You know, because if you think about it, the perpetrator is probably at least in their 70s.
Yeah.
On the low end, if you think about the suspect at the time the crime was committed being 20. Let's just put it at 20.
Sure, yeah.
So,
I mean, I was born in 66, so I'm thinking, man,
so we know it's not you.
We know it's not me. I'm safe.
That's one person we can strike off the list, but 75?
Yeah.
At the low end, probably.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's what does become tough with these older cases. The technology gets better. We know that.
Right.
The problem is witnesses die, DNA degrades, and suspects or the actual killers die off. Now, you might be able to get their name and you might be able to
exhume their body
and prove that it was them, but they'll never technically pay for the crime.
No, because
they're deceased.
Right.
But this was a tough one. There's no doubt about it. I mean, when you factor in the murder of a 4-year-old girl that to me seems completely senseless in whatever scenario this murder took place.
Right.
Let's say it was connected to Linda. It maybe not. Even if it was just a robbery gone bad, why do you need to kill a 4-year-old girl?
Yeah, I just don't understand why.
Or kill anybody for that matter.
Well,
but
sure. Why'd you have to go to those additional steps?
And I think one of the questions that we didn't bring up was the dogs, right? These dogs were known to be barkers.
Yeah. Not friendly.
Not friendly to strangers. So why didn't they bark? Why didn't they alert everyone that was home that, hey, there's a stranger in the house?
Right.
Well, was that because the person was not a stranger and they were familiar to the dogs, so the dogs didn't bark?
That's a very good point.
It's a good theory, but that's all it is. I just don't know what the motive is. That's what's got me scratching my head with this case. And I'm sure the same goes with police. And that's why it's still unsolved after, 50 plus years.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's it for the Bricca family murder. Gibbs, we got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi guys, it's Dave from Sheffield in the UK. I'm just calling, to say thank for all the amazing cases you've covered, and you keep me entertained while I'm doing the housework or making an animation, things like that. I hope the podcast continues for many years to come. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Good day. Dave.
Why would you come back at him with an Australian accent? Because you can't do a British accent.
Because I couldn't do the British accent right away. I don't know why.
That was actually not too bad, to be honest with you.
Stop by my head.
But we appreciate that, Dave, very much. Somehow, to me, the stay safe and keep your own time ticking sounds cooler in some of these other accents. I dig it.
You do. You like it.
Well, hello, Mike and Gibby. It's Cindy Calhoun. I just want to know when you putting out episode 178. Last I've seen was 177. I guess I don't know if you worked Easter or not because, it's Easter Sunday, but anyway, I trust that you all are doing well. I like the show very much, as you know. I wish you would do the episode on baby Sterling. I know that's going to be a tearjerker and a heartbreaker, the baby that was left abandoned in the swing. I'd love to hear your outtake on it. Anyway, you have a good week and stay safe and healthy.
And then as soon as she hung up, she saw the little thing come across. The episode's there.
So Cindy is one of our biggest fans.
Yeah.
I know she's down in, I believe, Alabama. And I talk to her every week.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when I put the episodes out on the website on Sunday night, Cindy doesn't get them right away. There's something to do with the refresh. I'm not sure what it is. It takes a couple days for her to be able to see them, and we can't figure it out. We go back and forth in emails. But she's one of our biggest fans.
Tell her to clear out her browser history, reboot. That's what the help desk at my work always says when I have an issue.
Yeah, reboot.
Yeah. Did you try to clear your history?
Hey, you know what you need to come back with? Did you go to school to learn that? Because that's what I'd say to my wife at home.
Exactly.
Unplug, reboot.
Right.
Everything will work.
But that's not even what I called you about.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. This is Brandy calling from Denver, Colorado, originally from St. Joseph, Missouri. I was just listening to your last episode and heard that your voicemails were down since the quarantine started. And I thought, well, gee, that's a little odd. You'd think that your numbers would be up because we're all locked down and have nothing else to do. So I just thought I'd give you a shout out and say thank you for everything you guys do. It's amazing. Keep up the good work as always. I don't have any case suggestions because I like to be surprised by you. So stay safe, keep your own time ticking, and I am Team Gibby. Have a good one.
Oh, we love that.
Yep, we do love that.
The Team Gibby part.
She had a very nice, pleasant voice, too.
Yeah.
It was very soothing.
Very relaxing.
Yeah.
I'm kind of tired right now.
Like a voice that you would want to hear in a spa.
Just
as you're
all day
getting
long.
A massage or something.
Wonder if she can do my apps on my phone be that voice.
Like to replace the robotic turn left now voice?
The one that yells at me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you can do that.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, it's Kim calling in from Blue Earth, Minnesota. I was calling to let you know that I love you guys. You guys are awesome. You rock. And I come from this itty bitty town in deep south Minnesota, like 10 minutes from the Iowa border, maybe 15. And nothing ever exciting happens here, but there is one case that I think you guys might want to look into. It's Michelle Yvette Busha, I think is how you pronounce it, is Busha. She was our I-90 Jane Doe for since 1980, and she was finally identified in 2015, and I think it's pretty fascinating. I haven't found a whole lot of stuff on it, but maybe you guys can find some more information. So there you go. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Love you guys. Keep up the good work.
Thought she said she was Minnesota, but she didn't sound like she was from Minnesota.
Because not everybody has that Minnesota.
Why did she talk like they're from Minnesota? I'm from Minnesota.
Not everybody talks like that. But we appreciate that. We love you too. And we'll look into that case.
Yeah.
I know Gibby enjoys investigating some of the Jane Doe cases, especially the ones that have been solved or when they figure out who the Jane Doe is, going backwards.
Yes.
And figuring out, okay, what happened and how did it get to this point. So, all right, buddy, that's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.